So before we use the stick, let's just tone the belly up. So just pulling the belly in, tightening, and then releasing. Yeah, so just establishing the lower back belly complex of muscles. So I pull the belly in, it contracts the belly, but it also stretches the lower back, and then the lower back tightens, and that stretches the belly. So the muscles working one side stimulate the muscles the other side to kick in. So I pull in. Yes, a mind in Dan Chen is really the most important thing. It all starts with that. And as you work on it, the Dan Chen, it just becomes more and more of a real thing. To start with, there's nothing there. So by working on the Dan Chen the way we do, we're also sort of changing the mind into something that's a little bit more physical. So we'd like a sort of presence of mind in the Dan Chen all the time. John used to say 25%. 25% of your mind is always in the Dan Chen. And in a sense, it's like an ever-present awareness of one's impending death, of one's mortality. Yeah. So you're very much in your physicality, a physicality that one day will die, that won't last forever. The mind can think to itself that, oh, it's got all the time in the world, yeah. I pull the belly in, and as I do so, I pull my lower diaphragm up. So I'm tightening my bum and my groin, pulling it all up into the Dan Chen. So there's a sense that my lower heart, eros, is sucking down to the Dan Chen, and my anus especially is sucking up towards it. And then here everything separates. So pulling in and out. Okay. And now let's just do a bit with the stick. Yeah, so behind the neck, but just don't, make sure it doesn't pull you forwards like this, yeah? So you almost arch back into it. Yeah, so we're still working on that sort of Dantian lower back complex, but now we're getting the side muscles, the muscles that sort of twist you, involved as well. So it's the belt of the Dantian and the Min Meng. So with our mind, we can adjust the tension, the tone in the belt. And again, it's a physical mind. It's a mind that requires movement, really, movement of the body or in the body. And then just a few tipping. So really tightening the muscles one side to pull the stick down. Don't just let it drop. Really use the muscles, one side contracting, the other side being stretched. The more you contract one side, the more the other side will stretch. And then the more it will spring back when you let it. So nothing is passive. Everything is active. So if something happens, it's because we mean it to. Not because we're trying to control the situation, but because we have real presence of mind and body. A mind and body unified by spirit. And then just a few more twisting. Just see if you can get round a bit further than before. Okay, so let's just try just pulling. So I want to feel, so if I consider my left hand is trying to pull to the left, but at the same time, it is being pulled to the right by the other hand. And so there are two movements. And so I just want to feel that. I want to feel the balance, yeah, between the different forces. So when I dwell with the equilibrium, then energy will start to flow, will start to move and gather. So I just set up two forces and then just relax into it. I sort of relax the forces just enough for energy to start manifesting. And when the energy manifests, it will start movement. You know, it's like something inside you will start turning and twisting and then just pushing the stick. It's the same thing. You're just setting up two forces, but now they're going in the opposite direction. And I can just direct the energy that's being generated anywhere I want, yeah? So part of me is watching where it wants to go. And part of me is sort of assisting. And then just twist the stick. Yeah, so you're trying to twist one hand one way and one hand the other. So again, you're just setting up two forces that are opposite, and so they balance. So again, it's just an equilibrium that will allow energy to develop. And then just twisting the other way. And then just let's try the same idea, but just with the hands now. So just hands in prayer posture. So my left hand is sort of pushing, it's just falling in this direction. The other hand is just stopping it. But this hand is also falling and this hand is stopping it. So both hands have like two jobs to do.
So this should do exactly the same as when we with the, it's easier to feel with the stick because it's like there's sort of just space between the hands. And so it's support and trust. So both hands are trusting. So my left hand is trusting my right to support it. But my left hand is also supporting the right hand, which is trusting it to support it. So there's something magical about this posture. So my elbows are heavy. That's tending to push the two hands into each other, but it's also squeezing the fingers upwards. So just feel the middle fingers especially. And so that is very much connected to the flame in the thymus. And it goes up into the head center. Okay, great. So let's stand up now. Okay, so riding horse. Sink and relax. Again, we want this tension here, or tone, tautness, tightness. And just a sense of flowing down, especially down the back. Open up to gravity. Feel gravity as a descending flow through the body. And just relaxing all around here so that your legs can get this feeling that they're swelling apart. So when I relax the hips and the sacroiliacs, my sacrum will tend to angle back a little bit. So that's when I just have to feel the sacrum just being heavy. So the lower back is plumb erect. So the sacrum is the plumb on the end of the plumb line, the line being your spine. So I want this just to hang heavily, and when it does, it will tend to move a little bit forwards.
And if that brings you too much onto the front of the foot, then just let your head go back instead. So we want to ensure that we look forwards, not because we have reared up like this, but because my sacrum has dropped down and swung forwards a little bit. Okay. And now let's just breathe it, but with a real sense of pulling the belly in, like when we were sitting down. Same action. Just you have to just scan, especially the hip joints, making sure they don't tighten up. So just imagine your sacrum is just really heavy, so it just doesn't really want to move. So everything else moves around it. So there's a lot of movement of the head. So a mind that is maintaining equilibrium rather than a mind that is making choices. So it's really two minds. It's like part of you has to really believe that what you're doing is important and correct. Otherwise, you won't really do it properly. You'll always be half-hearted, yeah? And yet another part of your mind has to just be deeply suspicious. There's part of you that knows that you're getting it wrong, in the sense that next year you'll be doing it a lot better. And that it's always coming out of equilibrium. There's always part that you're overdoing and part that you're underdoing. And so that part of your mind is just always scanning, looking around, tweaking it, making tiny adjustments. So it's just like a creative, like a dancer. Yeah, they have to put their heart and soul into the performance. Otherwise, there won't be much communication with the audience, but they also have to make sure that technically it is perfect. Yeah, so two very different minds. So what they hope is that they've done enough practice for the mind that's attending to the technique to be almost subconscious, so that they can put everything into the performance, into the spirit and the energy. So this is the belly tightening. And then this is really just letting go. So there's a sense that the belly has to maintain its tightness, otherwise you'd explode. So the belly is just holding on. It's just keeping you together. And then just back into riding horse. So just feeling this widening. So these pockets here, the leg pits, they're really open. And just trying to keep the mind more in the sacrum than in the groin, yeah? And then the sacrum will just hang heavy and have this sense of cutting undermining the space you are facing. So there's a sense that, you know what it's like when you're standing with someone and they're just being overbearing, and there's a real sense that they're sort of crushing down on you. So we want the opposite, almost a sense that we're sort of holding back, but what that is actually doing is lifting the person's spirit and their heart, but so bringing the energy up through their body rather than crushing it down on top of them. And that just requires real presence of mind in the sacrum, in the sacrum sort of inert heaviness. It's just like a heavy weight. It's just making sure you're in the right position. Okay, and now let's just figure of eight it. So, but just going around the hips before we start the arms going. So. Yeah, so we just want to make sure that the figure of eight, it's not only in the arms, it's mainly in the waist, the hips, the legs, and under the ground. So your mind is just as much with the root as with the branches. And it's useful to think of the legs as being your roots, roots that extend into the earth. So your Dan Chen is the base of the bowl, the base of the trunk of the tree. Your arms are your branches, and your eyes, if you like. And then just it'll just slowly become the arms figurating. So when the arms figure of 8, your fingertips are leading the arms. So when I get carried away with it, which in a sense I want to be, because if I don't let myself get carried away, it will never really venture into new territory. But you can notice that as soon as you do, your bum sticks out a little bit. So you lose the tone in the belly. And so you just bring it back. So there's always a trade-off between spirit and correct technique, really. So I'm just imagining I'm going down into the ground and under, and as the other hand is going over my head. And my Dan Chen is just right in the middle. So the magical part of the figure of eight is its waist, is the tightness in the middle. So that's what young style lacks. Young style is just sort of round. It's like circles, yeah. And so the figure of eight just brings in this sort of this tightness in the middle that just makes it more like a machine, more like something that flourishes and proliferates. Yeah, so the figure of eight for us, it's like our yin yang symbol. You've got the two components interacting. And then just get a sense that as you go down, it's going behind you. Yeah. So you become very much inside this figure of eight machine rather than behind it. Yeah, so it's like a bit like a back bend. Yeah, so one of the reasons the bum tends to stick out all the time is because we're inspecting what we're doing. We're good students. So we're just trying to ensure that we keep it right, that we don't stray. And so we tend always to be behind what we're doing. So my backhand is going up my spine as far as it can before it branches out again. So let's bring it back to riding horse. Yeah, so what we don't want is that we don't want our care and attention to put us on the back foot. So by that, we mean put it behind what's happening. Yeah. So we're not holding back. We're actually advancing. The feast is forwards. And so doing the figure of eight with it reaching up your back just draws this naturally forwards. And so you can just stand regarding, but carefree. And then there's like a light confidence rather than an anxious care. And so my heels are just really driving into the ground, and that is just producing this lift in front of me, but also within me. Okay, so now let's just try the heart qigong. So just bringing it all in through the lower heart into the dantian, and then the upper heart bursts through the head and all around me. So reaching out, drawing it in. So there's a sort of imploring sort of sadness to that. And then this is just real a confident explosion. So I'm just reaching out and drawing the weeping child into my breast. And then here, this is almost like a burst of anger. So to the opposite, they're both opposites of each other. So this is the mother. You know, she's already weeping before the child has even got to her. She's weeping in sympathy. And then this is here, the angry father. So reaching out and really sucking the chest in and really dipping down into the belly. And then here, really thrusting the upper chest out and letting it burst. A heart burst. So drawing into the beloved lake, the subterranean lake. And then this is like the volcano that just bursts, showering everything with fire and ash. Okay. And now just back into riding horse. Again, just feeling the open leg pits, which will tend to settle you into the outside edges, and then just bringing mind into the heavy sacrum. So if my sacrum is not pulling down to earth, then my heart and spirit can't lift up to the heavens, to the sky. So the Taoist fourfold. So man, connected to the earth, connected to the heavens, unified by the Tao. Yeah, so what? Yeah, so the fundamental thing that makes us human is really our mortality. You know, the fact that we will die. So we are not gods. We are not eternal. And so that is really just the tightness in the Danchen. That just keeps you together so that you can do a life's work and not dribble your life away with pleasure and indulgence. And so your humanity is your mortality, really. And that is just mind in Danchen. And it's that that enables you to resonate with the other three, with the earth, the heavens, and the Tao. If you lose that, then everything disperses. You don't have some tension that's holding it all together. As John would say, you live a life going from one sensation to the next. Yeah. So what he would have called a meaningless life, a life that doesn't have a sort of a guiding light in it other than ego. Okay. And now let's just let's just try. So just stepping out, moving across. So just feel that as to move across, that you're toning up. Something in you is tightening, and you continue that tightening, and the foot pops up. Yeah. So we want to feel the tension in the Danchen, basically responsible for pretty much everything. And every now and then, something in me has to reach out. And then that can just be a spark of thymus, a spark of spirit. Yeah. So to sink, I tighten the belly. I pull myself in, and that draws me down. I don't just drop. Yeah. I'm pulling in here, and that is pulling me down. And it also draws the leg up. Yeah. And then I step out with this leg. So this is like, ooh, a burst of thymus. Yeah. My eyebrows raise. And then I tighten here again to pull myself into this leg, down into the leg. And if I continue that tension, it will draw my other leg up. So it's like I'm becoming a ball. I'm becoming fetal, like the embryo in the womb. You know, with just a gently curved spine. So, you know, that yoga pose where you're just child pose or fetus pose is just very useful. So my sinking is very much my Danchen withdrawing. I'm not just bending my leg. I'm becoming different. I'm really changing. And then I step here. And again, this is just a little spark. And then instantly I'm pulling the belly in again. And then 1, 2, 3. So I really want to feel that final third one, pulling my tail under like this. My spine is being drawn into the leg. So drawing here. This is sinking me into this leg, and then 1, 2, and 3. This is pulling my tail under. So we'd like to be like that all the time. But of course, we've got other things to do. And so we just come back to it, because this is when we're, in a sense, we're most unified, we're most capable, we have most potential when we're rolled up and bound up like this, with a spine that is just really smooth. And then anything that happens in the spine then will release energy. It's coiled up as much as it can be. And then I reach out, and then 1, 2, and 3. So I'd like to be able to just reach down and put my chin on my knee. Yeah. I want to be that coiled. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. And you can just feel it. The more coiled up and tight this becomes, the more spirit you have. Yeah. This is the sense in which sinking, which is really just drawing in the Danchen, brings up the spirit. Yeah. So the higher this knee can come, the more my sacrum gets sucked under, and the more charged up I become. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, just about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so we're just using that child pose, that fetus pose, to really charge us up, not to just withdraw and relax, but to become spirited. Yeah, and so as I come into the posture with my knee raising, I become like this smooth egg that's perched on a leg. And yet my spirit sends spines, like the spines of the hedgehog, out of me. So I get all these bristly antennae extending from the egg. So like two opposite structures, really, the smooth convex egg and then the spiny. And just feel you need to have part of your mind traveling out in this way so that this leg can just fold upwards. Yeah. So again, an equilibrium. So this hand here is like an arrow just pointing in that direction, keeping me on the outside edge. And then this can just soften and just come up. Yeah, so this is all the way through the form. Every time we send a hand out like this in order to step, for brush, knee, and push, then it's basically this. Yeah, your arms just aren't there; they're moving. The arms always represent movement. Yeah, so this is movement out, and then this is movement in the spiral, in the spiraling in, the coiling up. Yeah. Which is again is part of the leg coming up. Yeah. Okay, so let's just bring it back to riding horse again. Again, I get my knees in position. So my knees traveling out, my leg pits and groin open. And then I just bring my mind into the heavy sacrum. Yeah, and just, it's a very different mind, because it's a mind that's just with a heavy bone that's just dropping. This is a mind that's just trying to do something, trying to sort of wrench something open. And the mind in the sacrum is just, it's just a heavy drop. So again, two very different minds operating in the same body at the same time. And it's their difference really that keeps them separate, allows them to resonate. Okay, so now just feel the big mind, just the big self. So this sense of something behind you, just attending what's happening. So it's sort of towering above you, and it's just slightly behind, and it's basically doing exactly what you're doing. So its arms are sort of out here somewhere, and I'm just fitting the template. And the Dan Chen is the center. Yeah. So every reality has this common center, if you like, which is the Dan Chen. And then out of your front can step like your noble self. Yeah. So something can just step out, and it's the perfect you, if you like. It's the human, yeah, the human becoming God, yeah, the human, like the divine part of the human. So something can just step out, and it's like it's wearing a crown, or it's regal, yeah. So you've got the guardian, which is just filling the room and just embracing. And then you've got this aristocratic, almost haughty self that can just step out. And it's like it sort of attends to details. So it's just interested in everything. This is more like just a general thing. And now let's just try breathing, but sort of really getting the chest to sort of expand and sort of lift. And then the chest just closes and recedes. So it's basically the same as breathing with the Dan Chen, but so something in me really opens And then I just allow it just to come back in. Yeah, so this sort of noble self is very much from the heart. And so, this center needs a lot of work. So, because it's the one thing we tend not to have anymore. We don't have heart, we don't have soul. Yeah, so I just need that ability to just expand and extend beyond the mundane into the spiritual, and then just allow it just to spring back, because you can only hold it for a moment. So my chest, so my chest is made of two plates, and they just sort of open. It's like the Sacred Heart, those images of Christ with his chest ripped open and this bleeding, gleaming heart inside. So you're exposing something, and then you're just allowing it to spring back. Yeah, so all three centers really need to be worked on. So open, just with the breathing action. Yes, remember that thing that John said, nowadays we have only fledgling hearts, hearts that can't fly. So we have to teach it. So there's a sense that, like a bird, sort of flutters out of the cavity of my chest. Like the skylark, I love skylarks. The lark ascending. The blithe spirit. And then you can just bring your attention to the head. So the same thing happens there. There's a sense almost like your forehead opens. Your eyes go out of focus, they really do, and then it just closes again. So the centers are communicating with the outside, rather than just being contained inside all the time. It's the only way to develop them is to get them to interact with the world. And it's difficult because most people don't have them. And so, you really need to sort of just interact with nature, really. So this real sense that something is spreading here. And then it just naturally fills back in. Yeah, so here I have to be courageous. With spirit comes courage and joy. But it will only last a moment before it needs to come back in. Yeah, so you really have to let the eyes just go out of focus. Okay. And now, let's just go through them now. So just getting this flow down through the body, through the centers. So I'm just bringing it into the third eye, through the heart, into the belly, and then it just drains down my legs and into the ground. So part of your mind is with the movement, and part of your mind is with the tension in the belly, and part of your mind is with the heavy sacrum that is just hanging through all that. Okay, great. And now let's just finally, one last time, bring it back to riding horse. So this sense here, just feel it. The more you're open here and here, the more you tend to stick the bum out. So I get all that, and then I just mind in the sacrum, ooh, and then it pulls it forwards and down. So your bone is like the part of you that's operated upon by gravity. So it's just like the heavy part that doesn't really have much movement in it. And then of course the flesh is just full of movement. Yeah, so that's more like it's got this sort of pulsing action from the ground on it. And now just bringing it up. So mind here, and then just, ooh, I tighten, and this pops up. And now, remember, I just want to straighten the legs, but I really want to get that straightening to drive my heels into the ground so that the straightening of my legs doesn't send my sacrum and my tail back. They sort of slot in. They slot into this channel through my legs and through my heels and into the ground. So by straightening the legs and driving down with the heels, you're giving a natural lift to the Danchen, to all the three centers really. And if I lose that, I'll just naturally tilt forwards a little bit. And so that's the depressive posture. And that's the enemy really. So here it's my heels in the ground. And then the front of my foot can really work. Yeah. So my heels are rooted, they're sort of clamped. And then the front of my foot can just, like the little kitten that's happy. So my toes are sort of gathering gathering energy from the ground and sucking it up in a bubbling well. And my heels are just extending these extensive roots. So I am rooting into the ground and the earth is extending up into me. So there's a real sense that the whole leg really, but especially from the knee down, there's a real overlap. It's like you're standing knee deep in mud. So your lower leg is in the ground, but it's also got the ground coming up into it. So feel the min meng, but also feel the min meng on the neck. So the neck is like the equivalent of the lower back of so the cervical spine and the lumbar spine are very similar. So we're trying to just lengthen and straighten the lumbar spine, but also with the cervical spine. So my min meng is trying to sort of drift back, but also here. So the point that would touch the back of your Mandarin collar, we're just trying to get that to push back. So the adjustment is normally the chin being pushed in. So that's similar to just the heavy sacrum. It's something we have to always be coming back to because the head does tend to crane forwards as you get carried away by what it is that you're doing. Okay, good.